too loud. It's really great that everybody's up front. Yeah. So go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our Vinspire event. My name is Allie Webb, and I am part of Vinspire, and I want to start this tonight's introduction with some gratitude. I am very grateful for the Vinspire group and to be a part of it. For those of you that don't know about Vinspire, we host conversations once a month. We take the month of December off and the summer months off, but we present inspiring and informative topics from around the area, and we open them up to everybody to come for free. I also want to share my gratitude for the Strand. I really appreciate this really wonderful space and the Strand for supporting us here and our mission. So we're very happy to be here. And I'm grateful for all of you for coming and for being this community who is willing to be open and to listen and to learn. And so I'm really grateful that we can all be here together. And with that, I would like to introduce Dr. Michelle Cromwell from SUNY Plattsburgh, and one of our newest community members. We're very lucky to have her up here with us. She is the Chief Diversity Officer at SUNY Plattsburgh and the Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And sitting with her tonight is one of our Vinspire teammates, Dina McCullough. So I will let you guys take it from here. So thank you.
We sometimes pass a hat. Tonight we're not going to do that. There's a bucket out in the Strand that says please support the Strand. So if you want to drop a little bit of whatever, it's optional, it's up to you. We appreciate that, and it does help support the Strand. Oprah is somebody that I adore, and I've been told that even though I do not resemble her at all, this has been a wonderful experience to be able to partner with people from the room. So what my hope tonight is, and one of the things Oprah also said, is when you know better, or when you know more, you do better. And I realized after, for those of you that were here last night, or last year actually at this presentation, that we started a conversation here about what was happening at SUNY Plattsburgh. We brought a panel of students. It was a very dynamic evening. And I started the conversation where I thought we were as a community, and what I realized myself is that the community really wasn't there yet. And I shared that with Michelle because it was information that I felt was very important for us to take maybe a giant step back, because it wasn't about people being good people or bad people or what you knew or what you didn't know. Everybody is in a different place. So I realized that after that, and I bring that up because I'm always learning, and I think it's important that as a community we're always learning. So with that in mind, I met Michelle because I was on the search committee, and I know she's a rock star. I'm so honored that you're here as part of this community, and I'm thankful, as Ali said, for all of you that are here tonight on a cold night. You have choices. We know that you could be somewhere else. There's a massive chamber event tonight that you could be at, which Michelle said to me, how could you do that to me? I did not compete with us. I did not do it intentionally, but all of you had choices to be there, and you chose to be here because this is an important conversation. So I'm going to help with you, the audience, if there's questions. Do you want to be interrupted as we go, or would you like to wait till the end?
I think I want this to be a conversation,
Okay.
right? So we need to talk. So hopefully there'll be some buzz, and we'll chat it up.
So from a time check standpoint, we will end our conversation by, I'm hoping by 6. Okay? And leaving room for questions. So I'll help with keeping track of time. If any of you need to leave, come and go as you please.
I won't call you out.
No judgment.
I think you called a long time.
He's here.
Where is he?
Where's Officer Miller? So we're only going to call him out. That's all right. So we just encourage you to come and go as it seems fit for you. So with that, Michelle, you brought a fabulous presentation, and I'll be your partner tonight.
So not a presentation so much. So for me, if it isn't written, it doesn't exist. So this is kind of like my guide. This is like my seeing eye dog that I need to be able to see what I want to talk about. So not a presentation so much, but just for us to have a conversation. So next slide, please, Mark. So why don't we start from the beginning, right? We're talking about diversity. And very often when we talk about diversity, we're all talking about something different. So I want to engage us a little bit. So I want you to stand if you are born in another country. Can we give them a round of applause, please? Stand if you are from down south, from southern United States, or if your family is from the southern United States. Can we give them some love? Stand if you identify as a person of color, meaning that you're not white. I'll stand because I want to leave this with you. Okay. Stand if you're white. Can we give the white folk a round? All right, so what we're actually talking about is what we call workplace diversity, right? The things that we can see, those identities that we can see. But let's dig a little deeper, because very often when we talk about diversity, we're talking about the visible things like skin color, usually ethnic and racial diversity. How about standing if you're shy? Where are the shy folk? I'll stand because I'm shy. Can we give the shy folk a round of applause? How about standing if you hate conflict? I'm sitting because I love conflict. Otherwise I would be educated. Who are our type A personalities? Type A personalities? Jenny, Zaisha, Butterfly, you know you need to stand. All right, let's give them some love. So when you looked at a lot of the people that were standing, you couldn't tell that that was the identity that they were sort of like identifying with. And we call that behavioral diversity. And that's the catchy thing. So how many people here are in recruitment? Talent acquisition. Good. Because very often, that's the type of diversity that we don't see. So it's very difficult when I hear some of my clients as a consultant might say, well, you know, my company's not very diverse. And I would say, who says? So when we think about diversity, we also have to think about the dimensions of diversity that are invisible. And those are the ones that come back to bite us, because those are the ones that we don't see. So let's go a little deeper. Who are some of the people that are in entry-level positions in your jobs? Anybody in entry-level positions? All right, you're going to stand? Are you going to stand in solidarity with them? I'll stand in solidarity with people that are in entry-level positions, because somebody has to start somewhere. What about people that are in middle management positions? Can you stand? Can you give them some love? What about people who, by the job that you do, they take you to multiple locations? Stand. Right? Look around again. Give them some love. What we're talking about there is structural diversity. It is a type of diversity, and very often in institutions or in organizations, you find that there sometimes is conflict between people that are in different roles. So when we think about diversity, we also have to think about the role that people occupy in organizations. So we talked about workplace diversity, we talked about behavioral diversity, and we talked about structural diversity. All very important parts of diversity. So for myself, as an executive or as an administrator, or sometimes people say the higher ups, that's kind of like, very often people don't see that that also is a form of diversity, and that we have to sort of like engage with that. So what about people that were born between 1960 and 1979?
Including 79.
Including 79. All right, so what we're talking about is about a generation. What about people that were born between 1980 and 2000? Where the millennials? Let's give our millennials some love. All right, so that too is a form of diversity because we're talking about, usually when we're talking about this type of diversity, we're talking about trends, right? Or we're talking about the ways that people might change or be different. So again, if you leave with nothing else tonight, I want you to think about diversity as more than just the things that you can see, but also some of the things that you don't see. Next slide, please. I think Mark is thinking. Go again, Mark. So this is one of the best representations of diversity that I can think about, and I want you to never pigeonhole diversity. When you look at this, because you said you're going to talk to me, right? What is missing from this?
Great. Oh, okay.
You said you were going to talk to me.
Education.
Geography, education, physical abilities are there. Shout it out. Socioeconomics. So when you think of diversity, I want you to think about diversity as a broad range of human experiences. Because really that's what it is. It's the range of human experiences that make us up. So if you look at this puzzle makes up all of us. When you look at me or you listen to me, you hear an accent. So you can tell I've come from a land of thought. Right? You also see a black woman. But what don't you see? You don't see a Buddhist. Because that really is kind of like my main identity. You also don't see somebody that identifies as non-binary. Also a very important part of my identity. But which you don't see. And which you probably won't engage with when you interact with me. That's really important. Next slide, please. All right, so I put this out because I think especially for some of us that are working with, engaging with diversity, it's really important for us to understand the parts of people that are invisible. The parts of people's identities that you will never see or that they might not tell you about. So this is an interesting statistic. 1 in every 6 American women. I'm not from America, but I'm in that statistic. When you look at me, you can't tell that I'm a survivor of sexual violence. But I am, and that's an important part of my identity and a part of my human experience, right? That you don't see, but that you have to engage with. So again, we have to think really broadly. So I want to stop and just think about any thoughts, any questions because we're having a conversation. Y'all are a quiet bunch. What did they put in our wine?
I don't think they're drinking enough yet.
Yes.
Can you speak a little bit to this notion of non-binary?
Speak a little bit to
Non-binary.
the notion of non-binary. And I want to say something, so this is sort of like a disclaimer. In my role as a Chief Diversity Officer, it's really difficult for me to not use the mic because, again, we're not engaging with what everybody needs in terms of their human experience. I just want to make sure that I put that out there. So in terms of being non-binary, gender identity. So the best way for me to explain it is that in terms of how I think about my gender, and in terms of how I have been engendered by my family, I don't see myself as either male, masculine, or feminine. I was speaking to one of my colleagues, and I want to call you Jenny, and we were kind of like saying, you sometimes kind of like behave like a dude. And that's how I feel. Very different from my sexual orientation or my romantic orientation. So gender, very different from sexuality. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, I just wanted the audience, in case we throw these words around. you might notice.
And that's why you're here, to keep me honest. Thank you. Can we go to the next slide, please? Because, does anybody know what November is the month that we're commemorating? I know those 4 people there know.
Native American Heritage.
Native American Heritage Month. So I thought I would put this slide up, and I want to be very cognizant of why I put it up. Because I think in terms of invisibilities, we don't understand the experiences of people that are right in our community. And we are also on indigenous land. So I thought it was important to acknowledge that, especially because of the previous slide. Next slide, please, Mona. So we usually talk about, in diversity, we talk about the grade 8, right? But we see that there are more. Religion, the things that we can see, the things that we can't see, but I just wanted to put this up. But I want to say that diversity is nothing, it really is nothing, if we don't think about how we will engage with the things that people bring. So in your jobs, these are the people that come to you. But then what? What are we doing with it? In the community, you talk about diversifying the community. And people that are diverse, that bring all the identities, they come to the community. And then what? What do we do? So the thing that's most important, and I always say this, so much more important than diversity is inclusion. And it's not about inviting people in, but it's what are the intentional things we're doing to engage with people's diversity. Does that make sense? And I want you to hear this. Inclusion is a verb. It's not a thing. It's what are we doing? So, I want to talk about what this woman did for me, which is a really good example of inclusion. So, Dina knew that I was coming to the North Country. Let me talk about my different forms of diversity. Single, Black, immigrant, we can keep it going, right? Food choices. But Dina wanted to make sure that I felt welcome. But before you can feel welcome, that's the inclusion. There's something that has to be done intentionally. Do you all know what Dina did? By show of hands, how many people know what Dina did? A few do. So Dina invited about 60 of her good friends, hired a chef at her home, and had a welcome to Plattsburgh party for me. And what I can say is that intentional effort made me feel welcome. But I didn't just feel welcome. There was something that was done intentionally. So we can do the same things in our institutions.
But I can say that the part of where I say I do better is last year when we ended the panel, you'll remember that the students were here said to us, come to our events, come on campus, include us, invite us, and as a result of that, Mark and I actually had dinner with 2 of the students where I felt like they want this, and I think sometimes it's hard to know what people want, but I felt like the door was open for us to do more and to reach out more. So it's taking a chance. I had to see whether you were interested in doing that.
And
Open, and how to put that together. But it is a bit like any of these things. How do we make anyone feel welcome when they're different than what we are? And what are we looking to do as a community? So trying to model better behavior for all of us.
and to do something intentional. So to that end, I want to share that we all know that colleges are talking about recruiting more diverse faculty, right? That's the diversity part. And then when they come, what do? That's just it. And it's not that difficult. So a number of us from the SUNY system have been talking about how do we intentionally make our faculty of color feel welcome. And I thought, I could do what Dina did. I'm a trained chef, so that's some of the money cut. I don't have to hire chefs, but I'll still buy some food and invite them over to the house and just have authentic conversations. It's not that hard, but not a one and done, but doing it more intentionally and more often. So a big part of inclusion is our practices, our policies, and our programs. So I want you to think about that. The diversity stops here, but it's what do we do once we get people in, to our institutions, to our organizations, and to our communities.
I have Julia Giltz, where are you? She's here, my sister-in-law. The UU is doing some very special things around this too, are they not? You have done, and you've been very intentional also about having programming to address some of the issues of what it means to be inclusion. And I've seen it in the newspaper where you're inviting the community to come and have those conversations, even if you're not a member of, it's the Unitarian Universalist. So I'm thinking I just wanted to bring that up. I know that this is happening in a lot of different platforms. Bring some people, I don't know, do you have any other comments on that? No?
Julia, don't put me on the spot.
Yeah. she's also just back from Spain, so you know the jet lag is there. But I wanted to bring that up as a broadening because I don't mean to put myself out as an example of it. I think that it does happen, and we do need to learn from others, be more intentional, and kind of pick up on what people are doing and saying, let's go to this together, let's take a chance, let's be a little bit, take that risk and maybe go to some place we wouldn't have. I mean, how many of you have never been in the Strand before? Few. Excellent. So some of you are here for your first time tonight, even to experience this beautiful venue and see what it's like. That's taking a risk. You had to, probably on campus, you had to come all the way downtown and come in here, and you know, we appreciate that you did that you made the effort, because for me, the road, Ruger Street, leads both ways. It goes up and it goes down, and I think it is, the community needs to get on campus, and we love it when the students realize that it doesn't stop at the intersection point. You know, there's more both ways.
So I think to that point, where is Mr. Mayor? Where's our mayor? I'm going to be calling people out because we're having a conversation.
Julie's off the hook.
But I think to that point, you know, we can do something intentional to also make the community feel welcome. As a campus that lives in the community, we can also intentionally come off campus into the community and do things intentionally to engage with the community. I don't always expect the community to come to the Ivory Tower, but the Ivory Tower can come out of the tower and come into the community. And I'm seeing some people shaking their heads. So it really isn't rocket science, thinking about inclusion, but it really has to be thoughtful and it has to be intentional. Next slide, please, Mon. How am I doing on time? Next slide, please. One more. All right. So I want to move in to talk a little bit about some things that we all sometimes don't talk about, stereotypes. And stereotypes, they have a little kernel of truth. It's almost like we say you take one drop of ink to inform an ocean full of knowledge, right? So stereotypes have a little kernel of truth, but we can't take them to generalize all truth. So by show of hands, next slide please, Mark. By show of hands, how many people have heard the term CP time? Anybody wants to tell us, not the people of color? Anybody wants to tell us what CP time means? Everybody's looking around.
Colored people time?
Colored people time. Have you heard of that? By show of hands, how many people think it's a stereotype that people of color are always late? We said we're going to keep it real, right? So So here's a fact. So Edward Hall, who is a well-known ethnographer, did some research and really realized that there are different cultural types. There's a high context culture where they really believe in the group. They believe in solidarity. There are lots of things happening and connecting with each other. And these are usually from cultures from the Caribbean, from Africa, usually people of color. And then there are low context cultures which are really very individualistic. And what he found is that in high context cultures, the way that they process time is called polychromatic time. So in 1 minute, there's a lot happening in 1 minute. How many seconds are in a minute? 60 seconds. And in that 60 seconds, you have so much happening in that minute that sometimes time spills over from the 60 seconds into another minute. Are you following me with this? And sometimes it spills over from that second minute into another minute. So let's think about what are some of the experiences that people of color might have that might cause all that time to happen in that 1 minute. What are some of the experiences you think they might be having? And I'm seeing,
Jackie said concept, so trying to figure out the concept before I can apply it.
yeah. So polychromatic time. In 1 minute, and Jenny was telling me I needed to use a different analogy, but I'll want you all to go with me on this. So you have 60 seconds in 1 minute. And in that 1 minute, so I'll use myself intentionally. In that 1 minute, as a woman of color, I'm probably connecting with someone like Jenny, high context, and it's not contractual, so we're not just gonna, talk and then move on. We're talking and we're talking. Also in that minute, I might be thinking about some oppressive experiences that I might have had the week before or today. Are you with me? I might also be thinking about maybe my family, connecting with my family, because that's important, the group solidarity, all of that in that time. Time is spilling over, and spilling over, and spilling over. It's almost like dripping into a bucket, and spilling over. Whereas in monochromatic time, for the low context culture, time is very contractual. Things happen quickly. And people in low context cultures also don't have the experiences or some of the oppressive experiences of people from high context cultures.
Are you saying, Michelle, too, that this isn't just colored people? This could be the abuse slide earlier. Is this people that have suffered some kind of trauma, and because they have had some kind of trauma in their life, so you're not tying it so much to race, but you're explaining it specifically around this term, so colored people time, or is it different?
So both and. I think the example that I'm giving is really related to people of color, and cultural context. But I think to your point, it can probably also spill over into people that have different types of experiences. But the example that I'm giving is really related to ethnicity and culture. Are you totally confused yet?
What do you mean by low context, high context?
So low context, it's a term that's used to describe sort of like the cultural experiences. So for example, in a country like Japan, that's a high context culture, where they believe in the necessity of the group. There's solidarity. In the Caribbean, it's about the group. It's less about contractual things. So for example, in a high context culture, when somebody makes a contract or an agreement, it may not necessarily be written and signed, but it might be, we make the agreement, I tell you, yeah, and I believe you because it's about us and it's about the group and it's about solidarity.
So are you saying in a low context culture that they're more...
Individualism.
Okay, so they're on time more?
Can you hear what he's saying, or do you want us to repeat it? No, you're good. Okay.
Yes.
I mean, are you saying that they're on time more because they just tunnel vision and it's like the time is the time and they don't bring all this other stuff into it?
That's a part of the explanation. Yeah? And what we call it is monochromatic time. So how many people here are musicians? I actually wanted us to sort of like count off what happens sometimes in a minute. And you can do it on your own if you put your watches on and you start beating. So that's like monochromatic time, right? And if you count how much is happening in a minute, you can actually count how many beats are happening in a minute. Polychromatic time. You'll see there's more happening in the minute.
I just find it interesting, when you describe polychromatic time, to me, that just kind of describes a hell of a lot of people I know. And I've worked with, and I am with, regardless of age, color, culture, that's just a whole lot of different people fit that bill. And so I have a hard time linking that to either race or culture. I just feel like whether you're or low contact, you could be fully engaged polychromatically and late all the time because your minute's spilling over into the bucket every minute of the day. And, and because of your experiences and your family and your job or your people or your community.
And I want to say, what did we talk about just before with stereotypes? That it's just a kernel of truth, but that we cannot do what? Generalize, which is what you're saying. So there's a little explanation, and that explanation that Hall did you see what happened? We all started saying, well, you're talking about all people of color, but I'm not. It's an explanation that has a little kernel of truth, but that is not generalized to all people of color. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I'm almost looking at monochromatic and polychromatic time in a definition way, but I can't really relate it to culture or people or...
Right, because it might explain some.
It might explain it, but...
It might explain a bit of it, but it doesn't explain all of it. So
Yeah, so I totally unfamiliar and don't identify with that, but I'm wondering if part of this has to do with whether you feel or know that you're in a minority or if you're in the majority. Does that affect how we see and operate in time?
talk a little bit more about that.
Is there more going on in the mind when you feel that you are not maybe part of the overall group, that you're...
And minoritized?
Yeah. Does that affect that at all, the polychromatic versus monochromatic?
Well, I think, and I don't want to speak for all minoritized people, but I think sometimes when you regard, and I'm coming back to, what is your name? Kathy, coming back to Kathy's point, that this may spill over into different forms of being minoritized, right? When you think about identity, not just race. That there are things and there are thoughts happening because of your experiences. So it really is the experience of the oppressed. And I think what we're sort of like coming back to full circle is that as much as I love Edward Hall, he may not necessarily have been correct. Right? And all research isn't correct. But he had an explanation for something that was a little kernel of truth. That what do people do? They generalize it to everyone, and that's what stereotypes are. And then it creates that fixed image in our heads about who people are, what people do, and why people do it. And what I want to say is I'm glad that this made you feel uncomfortable, because what we just did together is that we question a stereotype. And a stereotype that many of us have implicitly or explicitly. Right? And you all quiet. All right, let's take a deep breath. CP time is not real. And all people of color are not always late. Next slide, please, Mike. So I want to move on to talk a little bit about how sometimes these fixed images become a part of ideas that we have or beliefs that we have. And sometimes these ideas and beliefs play out either implicitly or explicitly, very often implicitly. So I want you to just talk with each other about what might be wrong with what this person said. Morning walk to the office is for catching up on current events with a bright and articulate Alan. So just talk to each other and I'll give you like about 2 minutes. Sean, Delisha. Colin, what's wrong with it?
I guess I'll be a sacrifice. I don't see what's wrong with it.
Okay, good.
I think it's a good compliment.
It's a compliment. Okay. And I validate what Colin said. Anybody else?
Oh, wait, I thought you said I agree with her.
You agree with Colin that nothing is wrong?
Not.
Okay. Validating what you say too. So Eddie and then Louis.
I feel like the way it's phrased that she's pointing it out as almost this unexpected contrast or knowledge of history is right I feel like it's just the way it's phrased to me is that somehow should surprise you or be like a funny aspect of the statement. That just seems like she's pointing it out as a contrast.
Can you hear what he's saying? Okay.
So can you face them and say it again?
Louder this time.
So I feel like just the way it's phrased, if she's saying it as if this is a contrast that you wouldn't expect. This is an anomaly that is something that needs attention brought to it. The fact that this situation is right particular.
Luis?
I think that it's one of the things that happens. It can happen to a woman. It doesn't have to be racial.
Right.
It happens with somebody's sexuality. It's that if you're in the position of being in the minority and somebody says that, it could be taken, at least by that person that is not in the majority, as that you are being sort of certified as acceptable to that group of people. So it creates safety issues for those of us that are not in that situation. I've experienced that in different ways. I'm from Latin America. I sound pretty much, if you don't see me, as if I was raised here. And I've had people suddenly turn to me after I still spoken English since I was 3 years old and say, "You don't have an accent." And then I usually be sarcastic when I was younger. "Would you like me to talk like this? Would you feel I was more acceptable? That maybe you would like me that you know?" And it's an interesting thing because it's sort of a trigger that you have to really just know what to do. And on either side, you know, if you catch it, like when we were talking here, Chris was wondering about it. And then when you hear it from the other side, you wonder, well, how do you deal with it? You confront the person.
Absolutely. And I think, I wouldn't say that should be a next conversation, but to sort of like just answer the question. So, did we agree that something is wrong with this or that it's okay?
We're not sure yet.
We're not sure yet? Anybody else? Yes?
I think that in order to understand certain elements of like why it might be problematic, I think you also kind of have to have a certain level of education too. Like if you value what it means to be a bright and articulate alum, I feel like you're going to be more likely to understand why there might be issues with it.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
It does. And I think this conversation that we're having here, very open, very non-judgmental, is really important because this is a part of what you're talking about, that education. Betsy?
my question is, when is a compliment just a compliment?
And that goes back to some of what Louise is saying. That very often, is there anybody else that wants to say anything about this?
No, but what did Betsy say? What did Betsy just say?
Betsy's louder.
I said, my question is, when is a compliment just a compliment?
Yeah, okay.
When is a compliment just a compliment? And I think that's some of the interesting, what word do I use? Some of the conflict, right, between the different identities. And that we sometimes have to understand how we can engage across differences. Did I see Kathy? Kathy?
This is coming from a collegiate administrator, let's just say. So in the education world, to throw out bright and articulate is like saying, let's go get coffee. Maybe if they were talking and it's an engineering firm or it's a paper mill or some other kind of workplace or it's a restaurant, they might not bring out a coworker at a restaurant and say bright and articulate, but it kind of fits with Regis College. And then we think Regis College, right? We have plans, a marketing plan, because Regis College is bright and articulate. So, I mean, why wouldn't you? It's complimentary, but it's also, I don't know, kind of fits.
Okay.
So Louise has a follow-up.
And
then Colin.
And then Colin, and I think I saw Rowena's hand, and then Eddie, I want you to repeat what you said. So, your Colin.
So Louise,
Colin, and then Rowena.
The thing is interesting, the number of factors here. This is a picture of a white woman with a black man. If there were two blonde women, I wonder what the response would be. Or if it was an old man like me with a 20-year-old woman.
Okay.
In other words, there's a number of nuances in examining that.
And
that I
can you
think
say that
often
again?
don't get looked at.
That's it. There are a number of nuances that we have to look at because it's not just what it seems. And that's the tricky part. That it's navigating some of these nuances, and sometimes it's exhausting, and sometimes we make mistakes, but that's okay. But that's what we have to do. We have to navigate.
you want to go
So
to
Colin, and then Rowena, and then Jenny. Did you want to say
and
something?
then Lizzie. Colin.
I think this is a great example, a great conversation because it seems so benign.
Yeah.
And now just having listened to Luis and some other people weigh in, I am seeing it differently than maybe I originally was reading this because while Cara might be meaning this as a genuine compliment, the person might perceive it as not being not a compliment, saying, oh, so you think that this makes me exceptional, this makes me different from what you would normally see another student as. So it's maybe how someone intends it versus how it's perceived. And I'm seeing how if you could maybe see from the other person's perspective, it might not be as
Complimentary?
You're
right.
Even though you intended it.
Right. Okay. Rowena?
So I was going to say whether it's just a compliment or not, or whether it's right or not, will depend obviously, you would have to ask the law. But I think for me, as a woman of color, who's a leader, it feels like an overcompensation. So, as a for instance, when I started here shortly after my first year, though I know this individual meant well, the comment was, wow, you're better than we thought we were.
So it's an anomaly that you're good.
So you're good, but you're better than we thought that you were. And so I know that the intention was positive, a compliment. But on the flip side, from my experience, I'm thinking, well, what would you expect? Right? So I think that for someone who has experienced that, I see the overcompensation, perhaps not everybody else does.
Okay, so to be transparent, The alum is in the room tonight. The person in the picture is in the room tonight and wants to say something. So I wanted them to be anonymous, but I also want to honor if you want to say something.
So I wanted to kind of touch on the points made by the last 3 points, and as Kathy, I think it's interesting when you mentioned the area of education and maybe that supposedly being not a surprising comment, but I think also to look into and analyze like education and historically how underrepresented groups have been, their experiences in education, I feel like would make me feel like it is definitely inappropriate for a comment like that to occur. And then to Rowena and the gentleman in the back, yeah, I think when you think about intentions, you know, no one ever intends to microaggress or to give an insult. You know, I don't think anyone who does it is like, oh yeah, I'm about to microaggress right now, I'm about to insult them. It's intentional. Of course, it's always meant to be good and positive, but I think the real challenge is, of course, you know, I intentionally meant well, but stepping back and saying, where did that come from in the first place? Right. So really investing and interrogating, why did I choose to say right and articulate? You meant well, but then where did that come from? And why did you think that would be well? So being able to interrogate that aspect, and then realizing that it's, you know, it's an implicit behavior. Yeah, it's an implicit bias, and so working through that means a number of things, and holding yourself accountable also is a number of things.
Thank you, Jenny. And if I can just say one thing quickly, and I'm looking at the time, and I want the gentleman in this, what is your name, sir?
Terry.
Terry, to say something, because this is a microaggression, and the challenge is that when we talk about stereotypes, there is some implicit idea or belief that somebody that looks like you is not bright and articulate. And that's why we say, and again, it's the intention and the impact, but the intention comes from those implicit beliefs. And somebody talked about what do we do. That might be a next conversation. James Ryan, who was the dean at Harvard Graduate School of Ed, has this very interesting book called Wait What? And he talks about how you challenge microaggressions. Like you just put it back at their feet and you allow them to explain. So somebody says this, I wonder why you would say that I was bright and articulate. Or would you say that I was bright and articulate if I were X, Y, Z? And just allow them to explain. Yes, sir?
Actually, you said it perfectly. The only other thing I'll throw out is, when I first saw this, it reminded me of when President Obama first became president, and folks would make a big fuss over he's so articulate. I would often wonder, well, the dude went to Harvard, and he's the president of the United States. Why wouldn't he be articulate? I always found that strange that everyone thought he was so articulate. Of course he's going to be articulate. And something was beneath that, is what I thought. And
we're on another rabbit hole. Let's stay out of politics.
And we are no longer looking at the time, and we're 1 minute over, so I want to push.
So I think let's, yes. And also, Kristen, did you have something that you wanted to ask?
I mean, kind of though. I was reading maybe to a paranoid level into the verbiage, and I was focused on the word "our" and felt that it was sort of possessive, like. Look at our educational, look at Regis College, what we came up with.
Kristen?
Yes.
Oh, Kristen. Kristen. And I would call myself a bit a student of language for a while. I didn't see that possessive. Is that a pronoun? our pronoun?
Colin?
I didn't see that pronoun. Colin is our pronoun? Who are the English teachers here? Because that puts things on a whole other level. So why don't we jump out of this rabbit hole? You'll take us out of the rabbit hole, yes? Mark, may we have the next slide, please? Yes.
Oh, sorry, no, I was just gonna comment on.
Yes, so please, go ahead.
Okay, I was just gonna say that, the fact that the, person who represented the university felt the need to post it on Twitter and then also tag the university in it, I think is also kind of going off of the question about whether or not it was, when is a compliment just a compliment? It's not a compliment, you're going beyond telling that person on a personal level to the point of promotional purposes.
Yeah, and that was difficult. And I have to say that I've known this young woman for over 5 years, and she actually sent this to me, and I thought, ouch, we need to take that down, because if Black Twitter saw that, it would have been awful. So, thank you for allowing me to share that experience. So again, we have to think about our words. Words are not just words. Yes, please. Words are not just words. Words have meaning and they have messages. And is it Louise? And as Louise says, we have to sort of like navigate those nuances of our messages. And our messages sometimes are very intentional or sometimes implicit. So I would want to raise my hand and say, hi, I'm Michelle, and I have implicit bias. So if you look at this sheet, at the very back of the sheet, one of the ways that we microaggress, and I think Louise, you were sort of alluding to that, is with accent. So if we had time, I would have wanted to engage you by looking at this sheet and seeing if you find yourself in any of these scenarios. What about when we ask somebody, where are you from? And they tell you where they're from, and you say, no, but where are you from? No, really, where are you from? What is that message? You're trying to let them know that they don't belong, or that they're an outsider. Or there you go. Can you say it loudly,
I
please?
said, or you're interested in where they're from.
And I think that's an interesting point. Again, navigating the nuances, because we have to understand the difference between what is hostile and what is curious. Who said that? You have to see the difference between what is hostile and what is curious. And very often, people are curious, but sometimes they're hostile. And you have to be able to differentiate the difference.
And sometimes they're not hostile, but we hear it in a way that's hostile to us. So one of the things that if we do leave people with language, which you're talking a lot about paying attention, there's that opportunity in that moment, Michelle, to educate. And how do we say things in a way that people can hear that something was said to us in a way that we took as hostile. And I think that's, as we come full circle back to starting a conversation with anyone, it isn't just because you're in the community of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
I'm here as a community.
I think this is any kind of conversation that we have to normalize it, that it's really anything. That as we're genuinely curious about people and we're asking things, sometimes we aren't going to get it just right. And sometimes the other person takes it in a way, and you have to circle back and say, I heard it this way. Sally, where are you on that?
Well, I'm just going to add that sometimes I think when we feel like somebody's kind of digging in a place that doesn't feel comfortable to us, I have this new thing that people go, are you from here? And I'm a white girl living in a fairly white community, so why would I be offended? But what I say now is I go, oh no, I'm not from here, I'm from Beekmantown. And people laugh about that because it's funny, because it's like, oh no, I'm not from the city, I'm from Beekmantown. And I think that sometimes we can disarm people and really have a conversation if we're not on guard too. But I'm also speaking not from a minority standpoint, but just that when curiosity seems a little bit, oh, I'm not sure about this, I think we can you know, we all have the ability to joke around a little bit and turn it into a real conversation.
And I think, you're saying joking around, and I think that's a part of it, but I think a part of it is taking people on the journey, right? It really is taking people on the journey. And as James Ryan says in his book, Wait What? Even if somebody is being hostile, I think there's a way, especially in this work, that we need to not diminish people's humanity. At the end, that really is about keeping people's humanity intact. And even though somebody's being hostile, you can still sort of like call them in or call them out in a way that does not diminish their humanity, that allows them to then realize, oh, that I might have microaggressed, or I might have said something. So for example, something I get a lot is people asking me to touch my hair. And for some of my friends, they lose it.
What do you mean you want?
I'm like, no, I just ask, are your hands clean? And so touch it.
Do you remember this, that people that were here last year remember that this was a topic, and I showed my own ignorance around it because the student I met with, I said, I'm really curious about your hair because it was always changing, and I learned a lot. And I think she really said, you didn't ask that, but whenever I asked it, I didn't ask it the right way, but she was so great about how she was saying to me, just ask me. And that was really her best advice of how to just, but I have a gal that works for me who's white and married to a black man, and they have biracial kids, and they'll be in the grocery store, and people will just come up and touch her daughter's hair without asking. And she is very offended. Like, would you just do that to anybody? But it's also pregnant women get this. Like I have plenty of people out, like, why is my body now suddenly a thing that you feel like you can touch?
Right.
That's just not okay. You should ask before you touch any part of any human. But I bring that up because it was a topic last year that I think black hair is interesting.
Because people are curious.
Yeah.
About so many things. Really.
I wanted to ask Michelle, you made that comment about saying something and then asking, why would you say that? And I guess for me the question is, how do, a lot of times I've found myself in situations where I just don't say anything.
Yeah.
Because it's not worth it.
Yeah.
You pick your battles. Usually, if I do decide to say something, I assume that I can engage in dialogue. But I'm not always right. Like you said, well, why would you say that? But it's an interesting territory because the venues or the environments that need to be created for that kind of dialogue are hard to come up with.
Right.
Because the defensiveness that can arise on both sides.
Sort of like derail the process.
Yes, like you've been very skillful in walking us through this or getting us to think about it in a certain way. But I think, if you hear comments, like the gentleman said something, I'm just trying to find out. But you don't know how people feel. So in some ways you have to be open to have that person say, I don't feel comfortable when you ask it that way.
Or when you said so and so, it makes me feel.
And then it turns into something much larger than it is. So one of the explorations that I've engaged in all my life, pretty much, like I hope you're more aware of it, but living in New York City where there was a lot of diversity, was that people were more willing to do that because there was a lot of diversity. Here it's a little bit different when you're in that 95%.
Engage.
Yeah.
More willing to engage.
Yeah.
But I think, like Dina said earlier on, I think somehow we have to encourage each other to take those risks and to take each other on that journey. So, Mark, can you go to the next slide, please?
We'll wrap.
Yeah. So one of the things that we're trying to do, to the next slide, please, Mark. And the next. And the next. Thank you. So one of the things that I have to say in my first, and this really has nothing to do with me, I'm just facilitating. One of the things that we have been able to do as a community is to get a number of people together to have difficult conversations, and we call it anti-oppression, because we looked at the grade 8. No form of oppression is better than or worse than the other. Oppression by any name is oppression. And one of the things that we've done over the last maybe month or two is to get together to read some really difficult topics and have difficult conversations. And like you're saying, Louise, we created this container where we sit and we use the circle way. and we have deep dialogue about racism, about Black, help me, Jenny, about anti-Black sentiments, about white supremacy, and we have those conversations at a predominantly white institution. So I think as a community, one of the things I would want to do is to have us start engaging not just about racism, but about homophobia. It's real. About transphobia, about sexism, about all these different forms of oppression. So I think we have to do that, and we have to do that intentionally. Next slide, please. And we're done. And Dina's ready to hit
No, I'm not. You have been fabulous, and actually, Michelle, I have so much to offer, and there's so much more to be said. And there's something to be said for drawing a gentle close around something that leaves some opportunity for conversation. You'll be here for a little bit. I think that as you put this so nicely at the end, Louise, it's how do you have conversation? You mentioned that Michelle very expertly walked us through this. I think a lot of this in life, if you leave with anything, is how to have a conversation with anyone about anything that feels contentious, whether your viewpoint or, how do you invite conversation? How are you open to feedback? That's so important. So I think that you've kind of brought us back to, we can't accomplish a lot here tonight. Maybe we accomplished one thing, which is about how to have dialogue. We've got people in the room that I know are doulas and yoga teachers and counselors and petitions and fabulous people from the college that are here, photographers, publishers of magazines. I've got people that are bankers, fly for FedEx, doctors, journalists. I think I'm just looking around the room, musicians who we had, people that are new to the area, people that have lived here a long time. Teresa, who's in your book group, is here. I think Brad Miller is here, who was here speaking last month about downtown policing and brought to this stage too what that looks like. These conversations, it's not a one and done. We were here a year ago. We're here now. I want to just make sure that you all hopefully felt very welcome and heard tonight. If there's anything else that you want to say, or we said something that we shouldn't have, come tell us so that we can do better the next time.
Find me, keep me honest, call me in.
And who's our closer for Vinspire? Is it Sal?
Valley.
All right.
Can I share? There's a discussion at the Peace and Justice Center on Saturday in Burlington. The Peace and Justice Center is down it's next to the Skinny Pancake, and it's on White Fragility. So I'm going to go, and if anybody wants to join me, I just wanted to share that.
Very good. We could maybe put that up on our Facebook page so that people can find it.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
I think we should say thank you. Once again, it's an ongoing discussion, and it's something that I think everybody really has a lot to join in and speak up. So thanks from everybody at Vinspire. We will, December we take off. January we're not sure about. We seem to always get crazy weather in January, but we'll be in touch with you. So please give me your email if you'd like to be on our email list. I know you can find it on Facebook. We're quite out there now. We're doing a good job. So we'll be planning for the new year soon, and we'll let you all know. We thank the Strand so much. Like Dina said, there's a donation bucket out there. Drop a couple bucks in it. It helps us be here, and it helps the Strand stay beautiful and keep giving you these wonderful presentations. So what's coming up at the Strand? You might wonder, a Fleetwood Mac tribute, Almost Queen, tribute to Queen. Those sound fun. A little bit about The Grinch, a Warren Miller film, which is awesome skiing, and It's a Wonderful Life. So those are all, there's little tiny schedules out front, but I know you can find us online too, so keep that in mind. Maybe give somebody some tickets for the holidays. Would be a great idea. Also, I'm going to open it up to what's happening in your world that you want to share with people, but if Alexander Suarez is here,
he might have dropped his wallet and they have it at the front. Or if you feel like being out. So that's up at the front, Anybody have some announcements about what's happening in the community? What would you like to share?
So Saturday at the college is Night of Nations, and that is a celebration of global diversity on our campus, and it's free, and you just have to get tickets online. The tickets thing on, I get there, somewhere on our website, you can get there. And it's, there should be 12 different acts, I believe, from students from all over the world.
Is it the Angel Center?
Nope, it's in the Giltz
In
Auditorium.
the Eastland Guilds Auditorium?
That's where you know that place.
Sure do. Yeah, we'll be happy.
Anybody else? So with great gratitude, thank you for coming and wish you a happy Thanksgiving. It's a nice holiday to just debrief.
That's right.
Thank you.